Tigray. Hostilities started when government troops entered the region after the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, the ruling party in the region, attacked the army's northern command. According to the TPLF, the attack was meant to preempt a planned military strike by the government on the region, although there is a lack of clear evidence for this. In addition to the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the TPLF, Amhara Special Forces and militia, as well as Eritrean troops, entered the armed conflict in November. They are fighting alongside Ethiopian federal troops against forces affiliated with the TPLF. The government declared victory and the end of hostilities at the end of November, but clashes are ongoing in several areas. Ethiopian authorities insist the fighting is sporadic and the interim government has been established successfully in most districts, but on the ground, residents and NGOs tell a different story, one of daily battles and attacks. Today, Joanne Mariner, Director of Crisis Response Program at Amnesty International, is joining us to talk about how things are on the ground. Thank you for joining us, Joanne.
Thank you for having me.
Can you talk us through how so many lives are being affected by what's going on and how or if there are any international aid getting through?
Yeah, we are seeing a really dire humanitarian and human rights situation on the ground. So on the humanitarian front, there are continuing restrictions on aid, on the access of humanitarian groups that mean that there are people who are suffering from severe hunger, thirst, and lack of medical supplies, lack of shelter, lack of other basic supplies needed to survive. On the human rights front, Amnesty has documented widespread killing of civilians, including 2 large-scale massacres that we believe may amount to crimes against humanity. So the result, both of the humanitarian and the human rights atrocities, is that we're seeing massive displacement with over 400,000 people internally displaced, over 61,000 people having fled to Sudan. And, as you mentioned, with regard to Eritrean troops in the country, a very explosive regional situation with not only clear Eritrean involvement in the conflict, but also growing tensions between Sudan and Ethiopia and other neighboring states. So it's a very volatile situation right now.
It sounds very much so. We hear the word war crimes being bandied about. Can you tell us more about this? Are these people going to be held accountable in the end?
As in many international situations, the road to accountability is long and hard. And the first step, obviously, is objective and impartial investigations. So at this point, Amnesty International is calling for the United Nations to set up some sort of investigative body, either a commission of inquiry, as it's done in many previous conflicts, or to call upon the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to carry out an investigation on the ground, and obviously for the Ethiopian government to grant access to that investigation. But, in order to protect the evidence, you need to have an initial investigation. So that's the stage we're at. At some point, that could later lead to accountability and justice for the victims.
Are there is the UN getting through? Are there other humanitarian aid getting to these people, just to, if not at least to help, but at least to control the situation? I believe the press was allowed in some areas, but not in all. Are these people getting some sort of protection right now?
The government has been claiming that it's giving unfettered access, but what we're seeing on the ground is that humanitarians have access to some locations, but not all. And essentially, the more remote the location is, the less likely the access is. So there are many people who are still outside of the reach of humanitarian aid. You mentioned the media. The government has recently opened things up to a very limited extent in terms of media monitoring. But at the very same time that it was calling on, allowing a level of media access, it was arresting people who were serving as translators and fixers for different media outfits. So, on each of these areas, the government's rhetoric has been much more open than its actual practice.
I mean, we're also hearing devastating reports of rape and gender-based violence, which is shocking. Is there any way we can see an end to this? Is there any way that external forces can get involved and get things done? What can be done to end this devastating situation?
I mean, obviously, this is an international crisis, and it rises to the level that it should be on the UN Security Council's agenda, the UN Security Council being the body that's formally charged with maintaining international peace and security. But sadly, there's been a real, blockage at the UN level. So they've only discussed Tigray in sort of an ad hoc manner under what's called the AOB agenda, any other business. The crisis has not been put formally on the UN's agenda, and they haven't issued, the Security Council has not issued any formal statements, condemning the atrocities, calling for humanitarian aid. So, clearly there's a need for a much more concerted and urgent international response. One possibility that might lead to a better response is this Thursday, the UN Security Council is meeting to discuss hunger, and humanitarian aid in Tigray will specifically be discussed. So, we're hoping that there'll be much greater momentum and action on Thursday than there has been in the past at the Security Council.
Well, we truly hope so. We truly hope that this tragedy will come to an end. Joanne Mariner, thank you very much for your time today. We hope to have you again on A News soon, I hope, and discuss this further. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much.